Today on 90 Feet Away, we are joined by local legend, a guy that never takes no for an answer, was told at a very early age he wasn't good enough and proves everybody wrong by making it to play at the University of Virginia, drafted out of UVA, an incredible, quick career in baseball, but now has jumped levels through the coaching ranks. We are honored to have Coach Nate Irving of the New York Mets with us today. Stay tuned. Welcome back to 90 Feet Away. Today I am joined by one of the most interesting men in the world, at least in my opinion. This is a kid, I'm sorry, I'm still calling you a kid. This is a kid that I got to kind of get to know and watch right about after high school, and followed his entire career and his entire journey. And what an interesting career and an interesting journey it has been. And please help me welcome Nate Irving to the show. Nate, thanks for being here today, kiddo.
Holtz, thanks for having me, man. It's an honor to be with you on your journey as well, and see Game On grow over the years, and see you grow, and looking forward to catching up.
Hell yeah, man. Thank you. So for people that don't know Nate Irving, and the reason I call him such an interesting young man, born and raised in this area, born and raised in Yonkers, makes his way to Riverdale Country Day School, and a lot of what we talk about on this show, Nate, is kind of overcoming adversity and the whole mindset, positive mindset thing, and how not to get down when things are thrown at you. At Riverdale, and I'm not going to mention names here, and I'm not going to mention programs. I just want to keep it kind of vanilla for this one part. But if I remember correctly, your travel coach in your travel program told you specifically you would not play college baseball at any level. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I was also 15 at the time. So I think everything in life, kind of points you in a certain direction and gives you, the constraints that you need to follow your dreams. I knew that I wanted to play at a high level of college baseball from a really young age. I had people around me who had done the same thing, who had come from, the same area, who'd gone to the same schools and all that stuff. So I saw that as kind of a beacon of hope that I could do the same thing. If I worked hard enough, I felt like I had the talent to do it. But there were obviously numerous obstacles along the way. And that's, I think, what kind of, shapes the journey and shapes everything to make it worth it in the end.
At that time, Nate, if I may be off a year, you're going to be 32. Are you 31 now?
I'm 32.
Are you 30? You're 32. So I was close. Okay, I knew it was one or the other. So you're 32. 16 years ago, there weren't 40 travel programs like there are today, like just in this area, right? Yeah. There were like 3 or 4. You were either good enough or you weren't. And when the guy that ran your program told you that, was it F you, I'm going to show you? Was there, holy shit, like maybe I'm really not that good? Did you ever have any self-doubt, or you were just like, I'm going to show this guy?
You know what? I think it was more, don't get me wrong, at 15, 16, it was disappointing to hear that. But I think at the same light, it was more that I needed to find people who believed in me. I knew that I had worked hard from a really young age. I had been passionate about the game from a really young age. How that happened, that's a whole nother story. But, I think myself and my parents both felt like, I was going to keep doing this whether people wanted me to or not. And so it was about finding the opportunities and finding the environments in which people believed in me and my abilities. Thankfully, that actually came to pass pretty randomly, but but the world and the universe works in mysterious ways, and I ended up finding a great situation that kind of propelled me on my journey to college and so on and so forth.
So, I'm going to let the cat out of the bag now. So this travel coach told Nate that he wasn't good enough to play at any level in college, and all Nate Irving went on to do was play at one of the historic top 20, top 10 baseball schools in the country, and a phenomenal academic institution, UVA. So this guy goes from you're not good enough to play at any level to, I don't think you started right off the bat, but I remember watching you in the College World Series against Vanderbilt 2 years in a row. Take us through that, Nate. How does that happen? And holy cow, I made it. Like, I got here.
Yeah, so I was 16. We were at a tournament, had a college meeting or whatnot. Was told I said I want to play in the ACC and the SEC. And I was told you're not good enough. Like, you should focus on D3s and NESCAC schools, stuff like that. And I just kind of stayed the course, wanted to do it. And, I was going to figure out a way to make it happen. Ended up actually running into a coach of a program in Tennessee. I went to a USA Baseball and kind of showcase tournament. Ended up running into a coach in Tennessee. He ended up inviting me down to play for his team. He saw me play that weekend, invited me down to play for his team. Ironically enough, I played for his team for 2 years, my junior and senior year of high school. Ironically enough, my road roommate while we were traveling around going to tournaments in the South was Mookie Betts. And so it's been awesome to see kind of everybody's journey, and especially his journey since we were in high school together. But so played for a team in Tennessee, was recruited by a few schools, ended up choosing the University of Virginia. Went to UVA in fall of 2011, I guess now, yeah. And it completely shattered my expectations, anticipations of what college baseball was going to be like. It was the hardest I had worked in my whole life. It was the most intense baseball environment that I had been in, which is what I wanted. It was everything that I wanted in a program. It pushed me, past what I thought my limitations were. We had a phenomenal team. The coaching staff was great at pushing us to really kind of grow into the best versions of ourselves and the best team that we could be. Had the opportunity to go to the College World Series in 2014. Ended up losing in the final, and then got drafted and started my professional career. But when I got to UVA as a freshman, there was no guarantees that I would play. In the recruiting process, I was basically told we're going to bring in a junior college guy. You'll probably spend a lot of time in the bullpen learning the system. Back then, the system was complex, and it was compared to learning Chinese if you had never learned Chinese before. And so I kind of felt like I had a little bit of that in my favor. I knew I was smart. I knew I could figure things out. I knew I could think critically. So I felt like if I could get in there and work hard and show the staff that I could handle the system at a young age, and maybe I had a chance to play. Well, to make a long story short, we went home for Christmas break my freshman year. And when we came back, I didn't stop working the entire time I was home. And the junior college recruit that they had brought in came back and kind of looked like we hadn't really done anything. And so heading into the spring, I felt good. I was in a rhythm. I had learned the system pretty quickly. And I actually got the chance to start my freshman year. So I caught about 50 games my freshman year. Caught about 58 or 59 my sophomore year, and then caught another 55 or 56 my junior year, including the College World Series. So it kind of started quick and took off after that.
So 2011, there are 40-plus guys on the roster. There's some red shirts. How many catches are on your roster at that point, Nate?
We had two of us, myself, the junior college recruit, and we had an infielder. He could play short. He could play second. Dude had the best hands I've ever. He still has the best hands that I've ever seen in my life. And he was kind of like our emergency catcher. And he caught a little bit that year. So there were three technically. two of us main, and then another utility guy who could fill in.
So this kid that literally is told that he's not good enough to play at any level, is a starting catcher in a complex system in one of the top schools in the country. Do you ever kind of feel like, I need to pick up the phone and call this piece and tell him how wrong he was? I mean, did you ever feel like that? I know at times in my life, there was one instance specifically for me that I really, truly felt that way, and I got to do it. I mean, I literally got to do it. I was thrown off my college baseball team for going to a friend's funeral before cell phones. I left the coach a note. I got back 2 days later, and he told me I let my team down, and I should clean out my locker, and that's how it ended for me. 40-plus years later, they find out I'm head coach in the Olympics, and guess what? They want me to come, speak at the school. It was 40 some years, but like telling them no was definitely, a happy point for me. Maybe I'm just immature. I don't know, but I couldn't wait to tell them no. Did you ever feel that way?
No, I mean, inside, sure. But I think hindsight's always 2020, and as my journey has gone on, I mean, I've made plenty of mistakes in my own life. And I've just kind of realized that like everything shapes the journey. It's like if I never would have left that team in New York, I never would have found the team in Tennessee. I never would have found people that believed in me. And my journey could look vastly, vastly different. And even in
what if you weren't that resilient? What if a kid was told he's not good enough? Nate, that's what I'm saying. For me, there was something in you, and it may not have been you. Again, it may have been your incredibly supportive parents that said, Bud, we got you. We're going to do whatever it is that we can do to help you get to where you want to get. But I know there's a lot of 16U kids, and I don't want to say that are soft, but the path of least resistance, fight or flight, see ya.
I mean, from my perspective, there was never a loss in love for the game. And that's true to this day. I mean, the last 2 years, I've really gotten no break. I've gone from running our hitting stuff at the complex for the Reds to a full winter ball season in Venezuela, back to affiliate hitting coach job for the Reds, back to Venezuela. A couple of weeks ago, I was in Port St. Lucie. I'm now with the Mets, and so we had a hitting camp with the Mets in Port St. Lucie for a week and a half, and now I'm back to Venezuela. And then when this is done, I'll go back to Phoenix for a couple of weeks and finally rest a little bit, and then I'll go straight to spring training. So, I mean, ever since I was young, I've never been at a loss of love for the game. And I think that's what my parents noticed in me as well. And credit to them, they didn't push me in any direction. They let me go, do what I wanted to do. And I think saw the passion and love that I had for the game and said, go after it no matter what. And it'll take you where it'll take you. So it's all water under the bridge now. But the biggest difference that I've seen, and I see it now, especially in pro ball too, you can't really fake love for the game. It's really hard to fake it. And in my case personally, I think it's more about just never relenting on stuff that you're passionate about. And it's taken me in many different ways, not only on the playing side. We can get into that, but it's just never really giving up on what you love to do.
Well, I'm going to lead you into that. But I say it all the time. You can't fake love and passion, right? If you're doing this type of stuff just for money, like you're in the wrong field. You're doing this, you're creating relationships, you're getting to know people. It's amazing. For me, you're not just a great coach, a great player. There was always something different. You were way beyond your years in the maturity of your thought process. Where am I going with that? I'm going to tell you where I'm going with that. So you get drafted. You play a couple of years in in the Diamondback organization. And I remember talking to you. It may have been on a break while you were home, and what were you really concentrating on at UVA to finish up your degree? And I remember you specifically looking me in the eye, and I just couldn't understand it. Spanish. Spanish was something that you, I'm going to go back and I'm going to say a 23-year-old, a 22-year-old, knew that in your future that was going to be incredibly important to you. I really, because UVA is such an incredible academic institution, I'm like, what is he doing? But here we are, how many years later, living in Venezuela, basically living in Venezuela, fluent in Spanish, and coaching at that level. Never mind the ease of being able to speak, but the relationships you're able to form now with the players is how much easier because you don't need a translator.
Yeah, man. I don't think I knew it at the time. So full disclosure, I double majored at UVA, one of which was international affairs, foreign relations, and the other was Spanish. And I took Spanish in high school at Riverdale. I was around a lot of Spanish speakers growing up, so I had an ear for the language. I could understand a lot. I couldn't really communicate, but I could understand some stuff. And so when I got to UVA, you take Spanish 101, all that stuff, that line, and half of my teammates are struggling. It was like just the basic Spanish classes. And I'm like, yeah, man, yeah, I've been doing this for a while. And so over time, in college, I realized that like I could take Spanish classes and do pretty well in them with, to be completely honest, a minimal amount of effort. And so instead of taking, American poetry or, tap dance for my extracurriculars, I ended up taking Spanish classes. And I took enough Spanish classes that by the time I graduated, I had qualified for a second major. So that's kind of how the Spanish major came about. Unbeknownst to me at the time, I didn't know that I wanted to coach. I actually was vehemently against coaching.
It was coaching and sports management, if I remember correctly. Like you were thinking about going on the agents. Yeah.
So you hit it. Yeah, I originally, like a long, long time ago, I thought like, hey, I have this experience in pro baseball. I love Latin American culture. I have a lot of friends who are Latinos, especially in New York City and stuff. And I wanted to kind of be someone who could help guys on that journey, long after my playing career was done. Playing career ended up not being that long anyway. So over time, it just became apparent to me that like if I wanted to work in baseball, Spanish was something that was either going to help me a lot or was going to hold me back from a side of the industry that I think is pretty much untapped. And not untapped. I mean, obviously the baseball industry is vast and teams do a great job with Latin American stuff. But it was a niche that I could find for myself being from the States, having a strong educational background that I had, and also being able to communicate in the language, I thought was kind of something that would give me maybe an advantage that other people didn't have. And the Spanish that I spoke back then is very different than the Spanish I speak now, especially after 2 years down here. And so that's probably been the biggest thing that's helped me along the way. The experience down here has helped me tenfold with all of that stuff. But yeah, it's been a journey. But again, I think it comes back to kind of like having a vision for what you want to do for your future and being able to follow it.
But that blew me away at 23. Anyway, another thing that kind of, you were one of the first. So most guys start out, and if they're lucky enough and they want a career in baseball, they start out, at the very bottom. But not Nate Irving. Nate Irving, they've almost created this crazy position within the Cincinnati Reds. Nate's not at single A or double A. Nate is traveling with the big league team. Nate is the bullpen catcher / catcher analytic guy, right? Is that like...
it took on a lot of variations. So I had stopped playing. I was playing the Atlantic League and Indy ball. Stopped playing. Went back to UVA to finish my degree. I was a grad assistant at UVA. And this kind of leads into your point a little bit too about like just building good relationships, never really giving up, stuff like that. My first manager in pro ball, a guy named J.R. House, played in the big leagues. Awesome guy, coaching the D-backs org for a long time. He had gotten hired as the third base coach for the Reds. And so I had kept in touch with him. And when I had stopped playing, I was applying for different jobs. And I saw that he had gotten the Reds job. And so I texted him. I said, hey, I applied for, I think it was an internship with the Reds or something like that. You know, like, hopefully I can see you again, blah, blah, blah. I'll never forget this. I was driving back to UVA. I think it was like New Year's Day or January 2nd. And I'm in the car driving on 95 South, and he calls me out of nowhere. I haven't talked to him in 5 years or so. We've only texted. And he's like, hey, so I talked to our president of baseball operations, our GM, and our manager, and I want to bring in somebody who can help me with the analytics side of catching, all of the, you know, analytics technology, movement stuff. Just we want to take the catching department with the Reds to another level. Would you be interested? And I was like, would I be interested? Like, you know the answer to that already. So it ended up working out. I was the bullpen catcher for the Reds. That was my title. And that was kind of my first responsibility when I got there. But what it grew into was I was able to help J.R. House, our catching coach, in kind of like major league catching development, so to say, writing development programs, writing throwing programs, overseeing all the analytics stuff with in collaboration with our analytics department. I actually kind of began to help do the same thing with our hitting staff over time as well. And so I worked on numerous projects behind the scenes on how we kind of were able to use technology in practice environments and BP, being able to kind of look at some stuff that, you know, at the major league level, like as a hitting coach, you don't have a lot of time to spare things. And so I kind of tried to fill those gaps for our hitting staff in the big leagues over my last 2 years there. And then over time, it became clear that, you know, I had a passion for helping and developing and all of those things. And so I ended up moving into our player development department, going to AA and having a group there that's actually in the big leagues with the Reds right now. So it's the major league job had many iterations, took many different variations of things. But the basis of it was that I was there to be the bullpen catcher and help out in whatever way that I could.
But for me, it's not always what you see is what you get, right? Because for me, I see Nate Irving, you know, Sydney and I come to Citi Field, and here's Nate on the field with the Reds, and it's kind of like, you know, as an outsider, it's like, holy crap, look at this guy, his first job in baseball, and he's traveling with the big league team after a couple of years. Again, Nate Irving is mature enough to say this is not what I want long term. So you went to management and asked to be moved because you wanted to be more involved with the day-to-day. They made you, if I'm correct, the AA bench coach.
Yeah, so it did, and those were conversations that happened over the course of a couple of years too. And they saw in me that, you know, I wanted to help, I wanted to be proactive. I was always trying to find ways, you know, for us as a group to be better for myself and how I could help the players, the staff, all that stuff. And so it was a conversation over the years. And from an organizational standpoint, too, we had reached a point with the Reds where, you know, we had started to trade away some of our veteran guys. And so there was this inkling that, you know, we were going to invest more in our development department. We had prospects. We had talent in the minor leagues. Guys like Ellie De La Cruz, Matt McClain, Christian Encarnacion Strand, you know, guys who we knew were going to get to our big league roster at some point. And so from that standpoint, the things that we had been able to accomplish at the big league level, we had gotten some systems in place, especially with the catching group that, you know, kind of took hold, and I think they're still using, you know, now. And so those things were in place. I didn't really need to oversee those anymore. Some of the hitting stuff that we had done, you know, obviously the hitting industry has grown immensely. And so we had brought in another set of hitting coaches who have very similar skill sets to, you know, the one that I have. And so it just became obvious over the years that, like, for my own career, but also for the organization, if I could go down and kind of like make sure that the next group of Reds big leaguers were ready once they got to the big leagues, that would probably be what gave our organization the most value. And I thought it was a good career choice at the time for myself, and a good opportunity to develop as a coach and actually have, some oversight responsibility of players of an affiliate. And so it seemed like the right thing to do.
Is that what led you to Venezuela? I mean, who were you there with, Nate?
Funny story. I go down to be our bench coach in 2022 in Chattanooga, Tennessee, Chattanooga Lookouts. The manager at that time, his name's Jose Moreno. He had worked for the Mariners, now as the AA manager for the Reds. Spent the whole summer with him. I was the bench coach, but I, assisted with the hitters, did all the advanced stuff, did all the tech stuff. So I had a lot of different responsibilities at the affiliate. But we kept in touch. And then after that year, I went back and I ran the hitting at the complex for the year. And then after it was like the middle of the summer, I think in 2023, and he calls me out of the blue and he says, Papi, he's been managing in Venezuela for years. He won the championship with Cardenales de Lara in 2021, I think. So he's well established down here. And so he called me and goes, Papi, I got something for you. Do you want to come down to Venezuela and be my hitting coach? And at the time I was like, wow, that's going to be a different challenge. But I had always wanted to play in winter ball when I was playing. And so it gave me the opportunity to kind of live out that experience, but from a little bit of a different side. I felt like I had a good basis for who I was as a coach and the things that I would want to do with a group. And so I said, yeah, and ended up down here because our AA manager with the Reds, basically took me down here with him.
Unbelievable. So all this positive stuff going on with the Reds, so happy to have you coming home. How does that happen? How does the intro with the New York Mets happen, and what gets you to come back to Brooklyn?
The coaching side of the industry is quite interesting. Obviously, we're under contract with our clubs, and we can't actually talk to other teams while we're under contract with our contracted clubs. And so a lot of what happens in terms of, changing organizations or getting hired in different places kind of happens through, connections and word of mouth, things of that nature. In a very odd way, but the baseball industry is small and it only gets smaller. The Mets have recently kind of revamped their player development department. And so throwing it all the way back to the reason I got into pro ball, the guy who's now in charge of Mets player development, his name's Andy Green. He used to be the manager for the Padres. He was the bench coach for the Cubs. And he had actually started in the minor leagues with the Diamondbacks. He was a minor league manager with the Diamondbacks. His first hitting coach was J.R. House.
Oh, God. Okay. So this is now becoming incestual.
Yeah. So, and that's why I say like the baseball industry is small and it only gets smaller. And I think something that it's been hard to do over the years, but, even when things get hard, just continuing to build good relationships and continuing to, maintain good relationships, I think is something that's been important for me over the course of my life. And, I got released by the D-backs after 2 or 3 years. But JR and I kept in touch. We have a good relationship, and that led me to the Reds. And so when the Mets were looking for hitting coaches, minor league, they basically revamped their hitting department. They were looking for minor league hitting coaches, affiliate hitting coaches who could supplement the department in different ways. My name came up. Andy Green called J.R. House and asked, what he had on a guy named Nate Irving from the Reds. And that's kind of, I think, how it happens. So I got a call from our farm director with the Reds and said, hey, the Mets asked for permission to interview you. I interviewed with the Mets over the course of about a week. Actually left for Venezuela kind of towards the end of the interview. So I was a little bit nervous about the Wi-Fi situation and figuring out whether I got the job or not. But they called me. I was in a hotel room in Curacao, going to the embassy. I was there to go to the embassy to get my visa. And they called me and they told me that I got the job and they were going to offer me to be a hitting coach in Brooklyn in high A for this next year. And I accepted, and here we are now.
Which is unbelievable. I mean, selfishly, I'm ecstatic that, I don't have to get on an airplane to come visit you now. And God knows it's been years. I feel like years since you've been home because any opportunity you get, you're back to Arizona. Like, you know what I mean? Like, anytime you're in the States, do you get to see your parents at all?
Not as much as I should. And bless their hearts, they've gotten on plenty of flight to come see me instead. So, and that was part of it. The three highest Mets affiliates are all within 3 hours of New York City, 3.5, 4 hours, something like that. So you have Brooklyn, you have Binghamton, then you have Syracuse. And so I knew that, it wasn't just about the Brooklyn job. It was about a lot of different things. I appreciated the direction that they were going in as an organization. I know quite a few people who they've hired over the last year or two, and deeply respect the people that they've brought in, especially the people that they brought in to run certain departments and to run the organization. And so overall, it felt like a great fit culturally. And then having those top three affiliates be close to home, getting to be in Brooklyn is great, but Binghamton's 2.5, 3 hours away. Syracuse is 3 hours away. So the ability for my family to not, have to take a flight to come see me, but just to hop in the car and take a day trip, that was really appealing. And the ultimate goal is to be back in the big leagues, in a larger capacity and in a capacity that I feel like I can help the group. And from an organizational side, I think the goal is to be able to be in a position where, you feel like you can contribute to an organization and the grander scheme of things over the course of time. And so it just felt like from the big league side and from the organizational side with my aspirations, the opportunity to work and grow and all of that stuff was there. And it seemed like a no-brainer.
I'm going to keep this open-ended a little bit just because to me, you're just such an anomaly. I mean, really, Spanish-speaking Jewish guy from Yonkers ends up in Venezuela. I mean, dude, it's wild. So when I usually ask what's next for Nate Irving, you probably don't even have an answer for me because it's kind of like, how's that leaf blowing in the wind right now amongst your guys as you continue to gain credibility within the industry that you love so much?
So this is actually something that's come up a lot over the course of the years. And I mean, this was first brought up, to me by our manager, David Bell, and GM Nick Kroll back in 2021. After I had spent a year or so on the big league staff, and they kind of said, "Hey, so like, what's next for you? Like, what do you want to do?" And it's been something that I think over time, I've known what I've wanted to do. I want to do great things at the highest level. To sum it up, that's basically it. But in learning more about the industry, I've kind of learned where my skill set and where my perspective on things would fit the best. So the short answer to what's next is who knows. But the more long-winded answer is, I feel like over the years, I've been able to kind of fit my skill set into parts of the industry where I can contribute and where I can make a difference. And so as long as I keep doing those things, as long as I, keep learning, keep growing, keep helping guys to the best of my ability, I think the opportunities kind of arise in due time. And that's hard for me even now. I have friends, I have colleagues and connections who, have super big time jobs, big time positions with responsibility in other organizations. And I often find myself looking in the mirror and saying, like, I know I have a skill set that can help. I know I have a perspective that I think not many other people have just from my experiences and the different places that I've been. And wanting those opportunities is one thing, and being able to be patient and wait for the right opportunity is another thing. And so that's something that I've worked on immensely over the years.
You're the chameleon that can do anything that's asked of you in any situation. That's what, to me, other than knowing you a long time, to me, that's what makes you special. You're not a hitting guy. You're a hitting guy that understands and can talk about the mental side. You're a mental side guy that can talk about catching. You're a catcher who can tell you about arm care. There's nothing in this game that I don't think you can't do and communicate with confidence. And now on top of everything, you can do it in 2 languages. It's almost unfair, Nate.
Well, thanks for that rousing pump up talk. I appreciate that. I think I've just followed what I'm passionate about, and something that I've really enjoyed doing is connecting the dots between things. The job as a bullpen catcher might not seem that crazy, but it was in those 3 years that I spent in the bullpen with the Reds that I started to learn pitch design. I started to learn, how pitchers attack certain guys. I started to learn how different guys with certain types of arsenals attack hitters, how that happens at the big league level. And then on the flip side, I was able to be around the hitters, and so I kind of learned how different hitters attack certain arsenal types. What do hitters do against this kind of pitcher? What does this kind of pitcher do against a certain kind of hitter? And so that experience for me has paid dividends tenfold, because I've kind of seen both sides of the aisle now, and can now communicate that to hitters. When I see an arsenal type, I can tell a hitter, like, hey, he's going to try to do this, but this is how we can put ourselves in the best situation to beat him. As a catcher, being able to just see things within the game, kind of understand the dynamic between pitchers and catchers, and say, like, yeah, well, this guy's trying to do this, but I know the catcher. I've seen, the tendencies on the catcher, and he oftentimes likes to do this. This guy always calls off-speed pitches early in the count with runners in scoring position. That's not a pitcher thing. That's a catcher thing. Those little things is just like the culmination of all the experiences has been really cool to see kind of like come to fruition. But again, it never stops. I'll keep learning at every step of the way that I go, and just keep kind of adding tools to a toolbox.
I would tell you this: don't ever be satisfied. I talk about this to players, coaches, whatever. I mean, I'm the same way. I'm a week away from being 59, and I'm never satisfied with where I'm at. When I have some free time, I'm reading or I'm on the internet trying to get better. Nate, thank you for being with us today. Thank you for spending time. Thank you for always, really from a distance, just continually making me proud. Who am I? But your journey is just such an incredibly special one. It's so great to hear you doing all these wonderful things, but it is time for you to come home. It's time to come home. All right, we will see you, if not before, we will see you this summer in Brooklyn. We may have to have like a Fury baseball outing at Cyclone Stadium to come pay homage to the great Nate Irving, but it'll be great to see you in person again, kiddo. Thanks for being with us today and spending some time on 90 Feet Away.
Thanks, Holtz. Appreciate you having me, man.